gone 4 o'clock, so if we can start, that'd be really helpful. So, welcome fellow Cabinet members, councillors and members of the public to this Cabinet meeting today at City Hall. I will be chairing the meeting today in the absence of the Mayor. Just a reminder to everyone to observe social distancing and to wear a mask whilst moving around the room unless you are exempt from doing so. You are not required to wear a mask when speaking. As usual, the agenda papers and public forum submissions are available on the Council's website. A couple of housekeeping items. Can I please draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure, which should be outlined on the agenda and is currently being displayed on the screen. There we are. Also to remind you that the meeting is being webcast, and so please speak into the microphone to ensure you are clearly heard. Agenda item 2, public forum. This is just a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed. I will reply to questions or ask the relevant Cabinet member to respond. Please also note that we've moved a few of the agenda items around. We've moved agenda item 25 to earlier in the meeting so that people can witness the public forum submission and discussion. We've also moved agenda items 24 and 29, which we'll take straight after agenda item 25. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence, Mayor Marvin Rees, who is unfortunately self-isolating today. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to declare? No? Great, thank you. Agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council, and there are none on this occasion. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions, and we have Councillor Havermack, Chair of the Ethical and Equitable Investment Policy Working Group.
Oh, you got to me very quickly. I'm not prepared. I forget when it's your turn to chair, Councillor Craney. Give me a second. So, on behalf... my laptop's just locked itself. I sadly don't know this off the top of my head. So, just going to have to switch that one back on.
If you want, I can quickly do Chair's business and come back to you. Is that okay?
Do that. I'm really sorry.
No problem, not a problem.
Caught me unaware.
That's right. Agenda item 7 is Chair's business, and I just want to mention the Strive Awards nomination. So the Strive internship, which was formerly known as the West of England Black Interns Pilot, has been shortlisted for the best collaboration between universities and employers at the National Undergraduate Employability Awards, which are due to take place on the 4th of March. This grew out from a conversation which Marvin and Asher had with Chris Hill and Heather Cooper at Hargreaves Lansdowne. They were inspired by the national 10,000 Black Intern scheme and wanted to work with the administration and UE to invest in our region's young people, improving representation of people of black heritage across a range of sectors in the west of England. Following the success of last year, this scheme will be expanded to include those of black, Asian and minoritised ethnic backgrounds. We are proud of that this scheme is receiving national praise, and it is a testament to the power of collaborative work between the Mayor's Office, the business sector and our higher education institutes. The One City approach to inclusive economic growth continues to deliver positive outcomes and career opportunities for the people of Bristol and the wider region. Asher, I don't know if you wanted to comment while we're waiting for Heather to sort her laptop.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say, huge hats off to Hargreaves Lansdowne because they took the initiative and they came to us and they were very clear and bold in their statement and their will to actually do something really remarkable. So the scheme was a very, very successful. A number of those young people, a couple of them actually even went on to secure employment, and so I'm really, really pleased that yet again in Bristol we've taken the initiative, or city partners have taken the initiative to address inequality in employment. So, yeah, well done to all concerned, and also all of the other city partners and city organisations. Hargreaves Lansdowne led with support from the local authority, but there were a number of other private sector business organisations who provided mentoring and support for those young people. So, yeah, really grateful.
You know, one of the interns found permanent employment in our own finance team, of course, and last I heard he was doing an excellent job. Heather, are you ready? Excellent, to you.
I am. Apologies for that. I do have just a comment from people sat over this way. Whether you could, I know this is going to sound surprising, but slow down a little bit when you're talking, as much as we like the meetings to go fast, so that we can hear all of the wonderful detail.
It's my Bristolian accent, it throws people off, I think.
So I've got a statement in response on the ethical and equitable investment policy, which is new and coming to Cabinet today. So I was chairing the policy working group. So on behalf of the ethical and equitable investment policy working group, I won't repeat that phrase, and the resources scrutiny committee, I would like to say that we are really pleased to be seeing this policy and that Bristol is leading the way by introducing the idea of equitability into our investment strategy. It is a great policy that has had input from members and also significant stakeholders from outside of the council, and it was driven forward by really passionate and motivated officers. However, it is really important to note that this brilliant policy is limited in terms of the investment it applies to. Treasury investments options are currently very limited, and security, yield and liquidity considerations will always take precedent. Service investments and loans are primarily based on the service need. So we'll need to consider what money we make available to invest in the projects that we deem ethical and equitable according to this policy. Otherwise, this policy will have little impact. A couple of comments from the group. The group would also like the inclusion of nuclear industries on the negative screen list to be kept under review. Comments that it remains a crucial part of an energy mix. This policy sets out the members' view on ethical and equitable investment. And it also makes a clear comment on how we invest our pensions and an instruction to our representative on the pension fund to consider the ethical and equitable points in this policy.
Thanks, Heather, and thank you to you and for all of the team involved in that piece of work. I know that it's been very well. It was very admirably conducted and very well received by everyone involved, so thank you. So I'll now move on to agenda item 8, Budget Monitoring Outturn Report, P8, and I will introduce this report. This report provides an update on the Council's forecast financial performance as at the end of November 2021, the financial pressures including the ongoing impact of the pandemic and the mitigations. The report contains submissions and acceptance of new funding bids. The total COVID-related pressure forecasted is 50.5 million, which is offset by COVID funding carried forward and received in year, totaling 49.7 million, giving a net COVID overspend of 0.8 million. Apart from the COVID financial pressures, the other significant cost pressures to the Council include adult social care services, children's social care placements, education, home to school transport and energy costs. We will continue to manage and identify mitigations on an ongoing basis to ensure the Council remains financially resilient going forward. Negotiations regarding the Council's 21-22 pay award have still not concluded, which could further impact on the Council's financial position. The savings position is included in the forecast above and is currently indicating that 5 million of the savings delivery programme is at risk of non-delivery. The report also sets out the financial position for the HRA, DSG, public health and capital budgets. Within the dedicated schools grant, there is a particularly significant risk to the Council where the in-year deficit on the DSG is forecast to be 16.8 million, which when added to that brought forward balance of 10 million will give a total deficit at year end of 26.8 million. The main area of overspend continues to be the expenditure on placement costs for children with additional and special educational needs within the high needs block. Now on to public forum statements and questions. We have no public forum statements or questions on this item. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment? No? Yeah. Was that a yes, Asher, or no? You have IT problems as well? It's only for comment, this one. I mean, you've got your DSG report later. You can, yeah, no problem. Okay, thanks. So if there's no further comments, in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report and which will now be displayed on the screen. Agenda item 9, the 2022-23 budget report and Treasury management strategy, including public health. And I will introduce this report. This budget protects libraries, children's centres and social care programmes such as Better Lives. This is very much a housing budget. Our capital programme spends 10.8 million for housing delivery along with our housing company Gorham, and this coming financial year there's 846,000 revenue funding. Apologies. The HRA budget, which will also follow in this paper, also has substantial funding for houses and invest in the Council's existing stock. Due to growing costs to services, the impact of the pandemic on revenues and government shortfall in funding for local government, we have a budget deficit of 19.5 million for 2022-23. However, rather than cutting services, we have focused this budget on improving how the council is run by reducing costs and creating greater efficiency, which are the focus for bridging the budget gap. This report proposes a net general revenue budget in 2022-23 of £431.1 million, and to finance the budget outlined above, savings and efficiencies of £17.9 million are identified for 22-23 and £34 million over the medium term, some of which will require further consultation, and the council's element of the council tax is supposed to increase next year by 2.99%, which includes the adult social care precept of 1%. Whilst we understand the impact this has on households across the city, we need to weigh up the balance of increases in council tax against continuation of vital services provided to our residents. Continuing to maintain our council tax reduction scheme ensures we continue to provide support to those who simply cannot afford to pay. Sound financial decision making to date has allowed us to keep libraries and children's centres open while they have closed in many other places facing the same pressures, and we will continue to work to create a better, inclusive and more sustainable city for all. We are adamant that we will reduce costs from within, focusing council capacity on our priorities, and any other decisions will be rigorously assessed so we can be assured they do not disproportionately impact vulnerable citizens. We continue to invest heavily in the city through our capital programme with over £1.9 billion planned over the next 10 years, particularly to help address the affordability and desperate need for housing and to drive forward inclusive economic recovery and improve our transport networks, bridges, parks and harbour. Our capital plans also include a £19 million decarbonisation fund to invest in our council buildings and vehicle fleet, as well as £97 million to make our council homes more energy efficient and to reduce carbon emissions, all part of our journey towards becoming carbon neutral. Despite these challenges, we will continue to focus on building a city where nobody is left behind, has a modern mass transit network, affordable homes for all, the high quality services our citizens expect, and at the same time drives a diverse economy that provides jobs for all and tackles the climate and ecological emergencies. Under Delegation 2, revisions will be required to the report to be presented to Council. The Department for Education and Skills Funding Agency have announced the Department for Education and the Education and Skills Funding Agency have announced some additional funding information for the DSG High Needs Block 22-23 and beyond. And in relation to our companies, we need to note that the Council loans to Bristol Heat Network will need to be revised to reflect the value of assets being transferred to Bristol Heat Networks Limited and Onward City Leap during the course of the year. We are still awaiting confirmation of final position on a number of these areas mentioned in the delegation, and these will be updated pre or post Council with transfer to and from reserves as appropriate. I'm happy to recommend the budget to Cabinet before submission on to full Council. We have received 5 public forum statements on this item. The first statement is from Clive Weston, who's from Bristol Link with Nicaragua, but I don't think he's able to attend. Is that right? Yeah, okay. The next statement is from Steve Mills from Unison. I understand Steve's not here either. Thank you. So the next statement we have is from Jeff Sutton from JMB. Welcome, Jeff. Please make your statement. You have 1 minute. Someone should be around with a microphone.
Right. Jeff Sutton, the JMB. The JMB says no to cuts that cause significant job losses or withdrawal of services and that increases the workload of frontline staff by decreasing their numbers. Says no to a budget that leads to services being outsourced or insourced to Bristol Waste, but preferably save money by bringing these work streams in-house. Says no to more use of overpaid consultants. How many millions have we wasted there? Says no to reductions by common activities work which are not researched properly. We've been here before with the rationalisation of admin and business support, and that failed miserably. Says no to a budget that detrimentally affects the lower paid citizens of the city. Service cuts affect the lower paid disproportionately to the better off. Social care cuts, loss of nursery places have a bigger impact in Hartcliffe and Easton than in Clifton or Cotton. These low-paid citizens, especially the council tenants, face a triple whammy: 3% rise in council tax, 4% rise in rent, and probably a large rise in their service charges.
10 seconds left,
energy charges, and it's a prohibitive amount. And don't outsource Bristol South Rehab.
Thank you, Jeff. We now have a statement from Councillor Heather Mack. You have 1 minute, Heather. Thank you.
I didn't realise I'd only have 1 minute. I have more than 1 minute to say, but This is an incredibly difficult time for local authority budgeting, and any constructive criticism or amendments we have for this budget does not negate the fact that the real issue here is lack of funding from the Conservative government. COVID has reduced our income from business rates and council tax, whilst the pandemic has increased demands for services. Inflation will cost us 21 million, while service pressures in adult and social care increase year on year. The changes to adult social care funding nationally will not really help local authorities like Bristol to provide the care everyone deserves. It will only look after wealthy homeowners. So we must first and foremost point the finger of blame for any cuts at the national government. However, I also have concerns about the decisions made by this administration with this budget, with 19 million of savings needed, yet 33 million proposed over the next few years. I recognise the need to be cautious, and I recognise the amount of money put into contingency reserves. But these cuts feel like more than is needed. And at a time when we have more than 10 million more in reserves than our policy states is necessary, these cuts seem unnecessarily harsh. I've said this before, but I will say it again. We need to consider the human and environmental capital of the city, not just our financial capital and reserves. It's not right to pretend that after years of cuts, there's still more room for the council to scale back departmental budgets without affecting real services and impacting on real people. Each of these cuts reduces our resilience as a city and weakens our communities.
Thank you. Next up, we've got a statement and two questions which are from David Ridgewell. Welcome, David. David, please read your statement. You have 1 minute.
Yeah. Thanks very much. My statement is clear. It's about public transport, really, and the function that used to be Bristol City Council's function, but of course now is transferred to the West of England Combined Authority by Act of Parliament. But WECA at the moment does not have precept powers. Most combined authorities that run transport have precepting powers to run their buses, trains, trams and light rail. And that's where we need to be in the future. But I think what we're looking for today is assurances that the supported bus service money, this is buses that run to the poorest parts of our community, South Bristol, East Bristol, the big estates where there is no commercial bus market, and where we need to make sure that that money is simply your precept is basically then passed directly to the Metro Mayor so we can protect that supported bus network. It's the same principle I'm asking South Gloucestershire Council and Bath and North East Somerset have already had assurances from Baines that they are passporting their money. So that's the first point. The second point is about the capital. We all want to see mass transit, but if we want to see the city regional deal and the capital receipts for that, we need to put 20% into the money that's come down from the DFT for corridors like the mass transit corridor to Bath along the A4, like the mass transit corridor and bus corridor to Cribbs Causeway, which we're working on now through Clifton and through Whitelidge Road, and on the A37, and of course the corridor that runs also between Radstock and Bath City Centre. Those are absolutely important that we fund them and we get on them and build them. The difficulty, I think, and the other assurance we need is that graffiti, which is a big issue that Marvin picked up, and I'm grateful that Steve Pearce carried on with, but we continue to hit that graffiti target, and we continue to get the bus shelters and the facilities clean, and we carry on with that programme. It's a big issue in the city and the city region. And also, I'd ask today that we prosecute, and we see prosecutions by the 4 unitary authorities of people that are graffitiing the city and the beautiful city that we've got in the city region and the public transport infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks, David.
And then finally, I suppose the only other point I'd make, and I would say it, we still need to come up with a policy to maintain community and public toilets. But that's with the private sector.
Thank you. I think you asked your 2 questions in there as well, because your questions were around the same. So if you're happy, I'll just launch into answering them because you're way more than your minute there. So in answer to your first question, which is around will we continue to passport our money to WECA, we absolutely will. So you can take that assurance from us too. Do you have a supplementary question on that?
I do, and that is I'd just like to know, and he's not here, so he's isolating. I'd just like to be reassured, but Kevin's here, as to make sure the Mayor is writing as many letters as possible to try to protect COVID-19 bus service operator grant. I do not want to be in a position, and we also need to get the Transport Board reset up, be in a position at the end of March when we park up 200 buses in the depots across the west of England and reduce bus services. We've really got to get every Conservative MP to really step up to the plate and persuade Boris Johnson to release the COVID-19 bus operator grant for the rest of the year. The bus service improvement plan money is not a big issue at the moment to the operators. It's that money, and I just really want assurances. I know Kerry's working hard. We just need to keep that pressure up. And if we can just, when you meet with the MPs for the city region, can we just remind them the letters, the pressure? It just needs to be heard very loud and clear. And can I ask that we use the core cities group? We're using the M10, but the core cities are also brought into this so that we just don't miss an opportunity to try to protect. Because no city region can move without a public transport network. It's the lifeblood of this city, as the Mayor keeps telling everybody, and the Metro Mayor as well. It can't come to a grinding halt because the government failed to fund it. Today, my final point was we have 60% of passengers on the network today. So that shows how bad we are.
Thanks, David. So we will continue to press on that as we have been doing. There is a core cities leaders meeting on Friday, so I'm sure we can ask Marvin to, if he's there, or if I'm there, we can raise it there. So absolutely. Your second question was around bus shelter maintenance, and will we be agreeing our 20% match funding? And again, absolutely we will.
Thank you. Just want to make sure that is agreed with the other three city leaders in the city region and also with North Somerset, so we move that bid forward because that's crucial to the economy again of the city region.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thank you. Do any cabinet members wish to comment? It's only the budget. Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report and which will now be displayed on the screen. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 10, which is the dedicated schools grant budget proposals, and I will ask Councillor Asher-Craig to introduce this report.
Thank you so much. So the report in front of Cabinet today sets out the use of the DSG funding and additional grants to be applied in 2022-23. To get to where we are today, we have to consult with the Bristol Schools Forum on all aspects of the use of the dedicated schools grant, and the regulations around school funding really limit the scope in which funding can be used. The Forum has a number of responsibilities to determine a small number of specific budgets, and those are laid out in the report, and the decisions that they make on the amount of funding to distribute to schools and early years settings. So in terms of the dedicated schools grant, I think we need to understand that we face, as we all know, a number of challenges in the SEND system, and we have been able to negotiate with the Schools Forum, and they've made available additional resources to enable us to continue the transformation programme that we have around the SEND. But the challenges remain for us. The budget that we have is not considered viable or sustainable. We've had to put together a DSG deficit management plan, but that will only reduce the deficit and not really resolve it. And you've heard from Councillor Cheney earlier about what the current position that we're in, and could be facing up to £26 million deficit in that budget. The council can make some meaningful inroads into that overspend, addressing the increasing demand, but that's the issue that we have. The demand on our services is increasing, hence you see the costs spiralling, but we have to bring those under control at some point. So I lay in front of you the this report. I think I also want to just add another point in terms of the role that the schools have really been playing. Hold on, I've just got I have a note here that I wanted to, there's some points I really wanted to make about the role of schools in all of this. Here we go. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to say, I was just looking. Yeah, I don't think I will actually continue on that one because I'll save that for the conversation that we have around the capital programme. But really, I do have to say, give thanks to the secondary heads and others who have been working extremely hard to get us into the position that we are at the moment. But the challenge still exists for the local authority. But I lay this report in front of you today for approval.
Thanks, Asher. And just to say, we have moved your other papers further up the agenda, so be ready. They'll come in a minute.
Yeah.
Though we haven't received any public forum statements or questions on this
Really?
item, do any other cabinet members wish to comment?
No.
Asher, your microphone's still on.
I'd just like to thank Asher for her hands-on involvement with the DSG budget. Sort of as someone, you've obviously stepped into this role fairly recently, and you obviously also know that I'm a big supporter of early years. So just want to get that on the record to say thank you for your tolerance, I guess, in the first instance, for my repeated questioning on the subject, and then kind of your warmth and ability to sort of cooperate with all the relevant parties that are involved in the bit of the DSG that I have a lot of interest in. So thank you very much, Asher.
Thanks, Nicola. Anyone else want to comment? No? I just reiterate that, Asher. I mean, you've picked this up very recently, and you're kind of, I guess you came into it with a lot of knowledge already, but it's really very impressive the way you've picked it all up. So if there's no one else is going to comment, I will hand it back to Councillor Craig to take the decision, which I support and will now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve this report.
Thank you. Agenda item 11, the Housing Revenue Account Budget and Business Plan 22-2023. Can I ask Councillor Tomlin to introduce this report?
Thank you. So the housing revenue account, which I'll also be referring to as the HRA throughout when I speak next, is a separate ring-fenced account and covers all activities of Bristol City as a landlord of approximately 28,500 council homes. In addition, it manages approximately 1,600 garages, as well as a few small number of other assets, such as commercial units. The report today seeks Cabinet's endorsement of the proposed 22-23 housing revenue account budget, the 5-year HRA capital programme, as well as the 30-year business plan. In addition, it seeks delegated authority to appoint all the necessary contractors and apply for and receive grants to deliver the housing investment plan and the HRA development plan for new housing in the city. To ensure the long-term viability of the HRA finances, the 30-year business plan has undergone a thorough review, including extensive consultation with stakeholders through Bristol's Big Housing Conversation, Investing in Council Homes, which has helped to shape the development of new long-term investment plans and priorities. And I would just also note this has included a cross-party working group to input into the proposals. The proposals include an increase in rents in line with government guidance as set out in the rent policy, which is CPI plus 1%, which will mean a 4.1% rent increase for next year. And that additional income will be directly invested back into improving our council housing stock through the housing investment programme, focusing on energy efficiency, improvements to communal blocks and estates, and an increased bathroom improvements programme. The budget has been set to ensure that HRA can deliver its day-to-day service provision and the service transformation programme, continue essential repairs, maintenance and improvements to the current housing stock, and a development programme which seeks to develop new council homes over the next 5 years. And as was referred to earlier, just a few key things I'd highlight. It will see an additional £80 million invested into retrofitting to make homes more energy efficient between now and 2030, which brings total committed funding to £97 million for energy efficiency and carbon retrofitting measures over the next 9 years. And this is in addition to £42 million we've invested over the previous 5 years. £12.5 million to commence a 5-year bathroom replacement programme that will deliver 5,500 new modern bathrooms in council homes by 2027. And also investing in communal areas, blocks and estates. It'll be only £500,000 for the next year, but in total £8.7 million over 5 years, focusing on improving standards in communal areas, blocks and estates, and addressing known issues that we have around antisocial behaviour. And obviously we'll do further work to determine the best use of these funds. A couple of other things I'd just highlight is around our housing delivery as well. I think it's a really exciting time for the work we want to do around investing in council homes and in new council homes as well. A huge amount of work has been done to pull this together, and so what we're looking at over the next 7 years is delivering an additional 2,069 council homes, which is quadruple the current planned housing revenue account development programme. And over the 30-year life of the plan, we'll be looking at over 9,000 new council homes, which represents a total investment of over £1.8 billion, something that we know the city needs and wants. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tom. And it's probably, we've talked about this a lot, but that's probably the biggest council house building programme in the country, I would have thought, at the moment, as well as the ability to do that retrofit and the concept of ring fencing the 1% additional rent for improvements to existing stock is great. It's brilliant. So we've received one public forum statement and 3 questions on this item. The first statement and 2 questions are from Clive Stevens. Clive, welcome back. It's good to see you. I'll give you 1 minute for your statement and then we'll move on to the questions, if that's all right.
And Happy New Year, everyone. So my statement, just be very brief. This housing issue is all embracing, and it was highlighted again in The Guardian on Saturday. The impact, it has impacts everywhere. Just one example, if rents keep going up generally, but wages don't, people have less money to spend in the economy. That's more general, that's private rents rather than specifically HRA. I've got 2 big concerns, but I'm looking forward to the Project 1000 coming next month. The first one I address in my statement is planning policy. Having been on a planning committee for 5 years, it's all a bit woolly and consensual, and the big players.
You've got 10 seconds left, Clive.
Dominate. And I really want to make sure you guys have got WECA and your own local plan nailed down. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then if we move to your first question.
Yeah, so my first question is about the rent levels. I got the impression that the rent levels were going up for existing homes, and then there was a different level for people moving into new homes. I'd just like that confirmed or explained, please.
Tom, can you pick that one up, yeah?
So it is the case that average rents for new built homes are higher. So, one of the things we're able to do is apply CPI plus 5% for new build homes. But also, there are other reasons why those homes might be higher in terms of rent level, because obviously, the average rent level is also about the number of bedrooms and stock that we have of that number of bedroom types. That affects the weekly rent as well. So, it's because social rents are obviously calculated using a formula that's set by the government, which factors in the value of the property. So, the rent standard is the thing that governs what we are and aren't allowed to do around rent increases and so on. Obviously, average rent for all BCC tenants at the moment is £81 and about 50p, give or take. So, yeah.
So it'll take some going before the 2 levels even get close to one another. Thank you. My follow-up for that is I've read recently that the housing list is now 16,000 families. That doesn't mean to say they need 16,000 homes, because obviously some of them are in council houses and are just looking for more bedrooms, and some of them are in council houses looking to downsize. So out of the 16,000, what's the estimate of how many actual homes are needed to cater for that list?
The exact answer we'll have to take away, but the thing I would say is obviously there are those that are housed in new build as it comes online, but there are also those that are housed through properties that become empty within our existing council stock, so we can take that away and come back to you in writing.
So my second question is about the Savills report, and because quite a lot of the money will be coming from something called Homes England grants, which fundamentally a taxpayer funded, I'd like to know, out of the 1.8 billion investment plan, what were the subsidies for the right to buy receipts in that model? I assume it's a great big spreadsheet. And the Homes England grants, please.
So the 1.8 billion is gross expenditure excluding inflation and based on aspirations, and doesn't include right to buy receipts and Home England grants. We have assumed a 40% contribution from either right to buy receipts or Homes England grant for the delivery of the programme over the years. The other thing I would just say on right to buy sales on the other part of your question is there is a general standard assumption that they'll decline over time as a greater proportion of tenants will have exercised their purchase rights, and the reduction obviously in affordability due to interest rate and house price increases. And obviously what we've pulled together here will be representing a substantial net increase in council housing stock over the 30-year plan based on our current projections.
It's, I'm just looking at the financial sustainability as opposed to the energy sustainability of these homes. So that possibly means that towards the end of the 30-year programme, 40%, nearly 40% of the build cost could be from Homes England grants.
I mean, yeah, that's what we said, 40% contribution between Homes England grant and right to buy, yeah. But that mix will, yeah, change over time, yeah.
So if something costs 200,000 to build, means 80,000 will be a Homes England grant.
My maths isn't very quick today, but yeah, I assume so. I think the key thing for us is the council house building programme will be funded through borrowing, right to buy receipts, and the Homes England grant. And obviously, this is a 30-year business plan, but it will be adjusted as we go. So as we know what happens with the council house and delivery, are we able to deliver more? Do we deliver existing projects on time? Do those financial equations change? Do we suddenly get a windfall grant for a particular scheme, for example, that might help? So you know, I absolutely accept that we've a lot of variation over the years.
I understand that. Thank you. I've used up my supplementary. Maybe we could meet for a coffee to go through this in a bit more detail.
Happy to.
Okay, that's.
Thank you, Clive. It's good to have you back. It's like the old days. Right, so the next question is from Councillor Marley Bennett. Welcome, Marley. Please ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Yeah, there's a lot to sort of welcome in this, in the HRA, including, you know, that this is the largest council house building scheme in the country, potentially. My question was specifically about the bathroom upgrade scheme, which might be a big sort of benefit to many council tenants. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer looking this way if that's okay. It's slightly easier. Many of our properties have got dated bathrooms, and you know we've got a lot we need to do around maintenance and investment in our bathrooms. So the thing is, the 12.5 million is to get it going. Obviously, we're hoping that we'll be able to then continue that beyond the next 5 years as the capital programme is updated. And what we'll be doing is developing the specification with residents and make sure we provide residents some options around what we'd look to do, including a shower, colour choices around tiles and decoration. Obviously, further work is required to determine which homes do we start with within the programme and make sure we are targeting the improvements where they're most needed based on age and condition of the existing bathroom. And it's anticipated we'll be starting this sort of part way through 22-23.
Thanks, Tom. And yeah, just a couple of sort of parts to my supplementary, I suppose. I was just wondering if you could clarify whether this scheme is separate to the 80 million for retrofitting, and also if you could go in a bit further about the environmental benefits of this scheme.
So yes, it's separate from the 80 million that will be invested into retrofit. In terms of some of the potential environmental benefits, which we've been doing some number crunching around in recent days, a replacement bathroom could potentially achieve an average saving of 27 litres per person per day, or 9,855 litres per year per person. So for a 4-person household on a standard water meter at a cubic metre cost of £1.68, this would be a saving of £64 per year. And the saving could be achieved from installation of water-efficient dual-flush toilets, which could save up to 9 litres of water per flush. And as we install more showers as part of the programme, the use of showers is likely to increase. Use of a shower instead of a bath could save up to 18 litres per day per person. A couple of other things I'll just highlight, you know, thinking about aerated tap heads to bath and wash basin taps. That could reduce water flow further, so you've got less than 4 metres of water per minute as a tap flow rate. And obviously, you know, make sure we're addressing any leaks or drips in the bathrooms as we do that replacement as well will be really crucial. I did a bit of work as well to work out, well, what does that look like if you assume, say, a minimum average of 2 people per property, just to take as a bit of an arbitrary average, and what that could look like, so 19,710 litres per household per year. If you take that across 5,500 new bathrooms, that's potentially over 108 million litres of water saved per year.
Thank you. Just a very thorough response. Right, thanks, Tom. Do any other? I think that's the end of our. Sorry, I've lost my place. Yeah, that's the end of our public forum on the subject. Has anyone got anything they want to add to the HRA? Don?
Yeah, just to say, I mean, my ward has got an awful lot of council houses in there, and I feel like I've waited here 5 years to see something like this. The scale of ambition and possibility for my residents, and just to say thanks to Tom. I know how much work he's put in, and also to officers I'm not allowed to name, but they know who they are, and others not present. I think this is really exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it has been an epic exercise, and as you mentioned, it is a 30-year plan, but it will be revisited as we go through, and I'm sure, I hope, there'll be more opportunities as we go along. So I'm going to hand back to you now, Tom, to take the decision, which I support, and should now be displayed on the screen. Sorry, Nicola. Oh, go on. Come on in.
Thanks, Craig. I just want to give my perspective on it from a kind of climate ecology and waste perspective in particular. I think when you see the way you and the team have approached the HRA business plan now, and you see how much, particularly in the energy space, but in terms of decarbonising the estate, pulling people out of fuel poverty and all the uncertainty around energy we'll talk about in a bit, the opportunity of the HRA land in terms of its contribution to ecology and biodiversity that we can make, it's been so refreshing to kind of see this all laid out in this kind of smart way, is what I'd say. And I think in that energy space where we could absolutely see regulation changing, and obviously it will change a huge amount in the 30 years, but even within the next 9 years, we will see kind of our understanding of how these estates get managed. It just feels like this is the key to this, to be honest with you, for my role, is to get into these business plans and understand how do we safeguard the investment that we'll need to get them all up to scratch on all those fronts. And so I've really enjoyed being involved in this, Tom, and I think it's the beginning of that conversation about how do we meet regulation, how do we make sure that we can actually support our tenants through the kind of rough and the smooth. And I think, we all can see what's coming forward in some macro challenges that we're going to face as a country. And I just feel like this is a great way forward. And I appreciate your flexibility as well about how we move that programme within the 30 years to make sure the money is spent at the right time with the greatest impact. So thanks, Tom.
Great, thanks. Anyone else I missed? No? Good, okay. All right, so back to you then, Tom, to take the decision, which I support, and it's now displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Great, thank you. So now we come to the first item on the agenda that we've moved. So this is agenda item 25, Adult Social Care In-House Rehabilitation Centres, and I'll hand over to Councillor Helen Holland.
Thanks very much, Craig. And I just want to start by saying that this is not an easy decision to make, but it's one that falls out from the budget proposals that you talked about earlier. And what I've kept front and centre in my mind as we've looked at and worked on this report is, first of all, the service to residents, and secondly, to treating our staff decently. And we all know, because we hear about it all the time on the national news, that the extraordinary circumstances that hospitals have found themselves in because of the additional pressures because of COVID. So it's not just winter pressures, it's been a very highly pressured environment for the last few months. And I think that some of the staff, and I've been talking to them this afternoon with colleagues, feel that the thank yous that they've had might ring a bit hollow when they then feel as if they've been treated badly by these proposals. So I regret that, I really do, and I think that we do want to put on record the thanks to the fantastic staff we've had, not just at the rehabs, but across social care, and how they've kept the city going. So that's a genuine thank you. And then to talk about where this proposal came from. So it initially came from Sirona and from the NHS, and Sirona are the NHS community services provider and now run South Bristol Community Hospital. And we all know about workforce pressures. I've talked about the pressures that have happened to the services, but also about recruitment pressures. So right across health and social care, it's been very difficult to recruit people, and the government in some ways have acknowledged that by now changing so that more people from the EU and other places across the world can come here and work. So in response to the hospitals needing to get more people out of hospital, and we know that there's a huge number of people in hospital who are medically fit for discharge, Sirona was unable to run the rehab at South Bristol Community Hospital at capacity. And at the same time, our own facility wasn't running at capacity because of some of the shortcomings of the accommodation, which is outdated now. Now, that's not a comment on the care that's delivered at the rehab, but it is about the accommodation and the lifts in particular there. So the approach came to us from Sirona and the NHS in wanting to increase the capacity. And to begin with, they would have been very happy just to kind of, borrow the staff. Well, obviously it's impossible for us to be able to do that. And we wanted to be able to work through that with the staff. The other thing that I want to remind people is that we don't have a statutory duty to provide rehabilitation services. And we've looked around and there's very few local authorities that are still in that business. Now, you might say that's a pity and local authorities could do it better in some cases because it's that social aspect, not the medical aspect of rehabilitating somebody. And we acknowledge that that's what goes on at both South Bristol and East Bristol Rehab. But we can't find those comparators who still do it. And we've already heard this afternoon about the budget pressures and the savings that have to be made. So as I say, what we've kept in the front of our minds is about how do we carry on providing the service and in fact improve the service and have more capacity in rehabilitation services and also treat our own staff decently. So the proposal is, and remember this is the start of the process, the proposal is that once a in principle decision has been made, and again I know that there's some concerns about an in principle decision, meaning that everything's done and dusted and we're not keeping an eye on how that goes through, but you've got real concerns, and I do thank the members of staff for coming and talking to us about those. So we do need to, and we intend to keep a very close eye on how that consultation and those negotiations go, but is to start the consultation for 2Ping our staff to Sirona to be able to continue to deliver the services that you deliver, and especially the aspects of social care and rehab that they don't necessarily have. And I know that the Chief Executive of Sirona came to your meeting last week and spoke about how they're looking forward to having those skills in their staff cohort. So this report really triggers that in principle decision to work with staff and your representatives in the trade unions to transfer the staff to South Bristol Community Hospital and increase the capacity of rehabilitation services in Bristol. So I'll stop there because I'll come back when we've had the statements, if that's all right, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. So we've received 2 public forum statements on this item. The first one is from Rowena Hayward from the GMB. Rowena, you've got a minute.
Chair, can I just say something? Helen's just said how much you all admire staff.
Yeah, do you want to use the microphone? And then we can, and then we can all hear you.
I don't want this to be part of my minute, by the way.
Okay,
what
no
I'm
problem,
requesting, Chair, is that if you actually do care and are very grateful for the staff and treat them with respect, these are representatives of 40 staff who work for South Bristol. Will you please allow me to at least read the statement out and not time me on the minute? It won't be for much longer than a minute, but I think it's only fair in this forum that every councillor and cabinet member actually hear what our concerns are, and this is just just a synopsis. I hope you've actually read our submission as well.
Yeah, so firstly, we'll have all read your statement anyway. I would also say that so there are lots of people with lots of questions, and we do need to get through all of them. So as long as it's not going to be sort of 5 minutes, then absolutely, carry on.
No, it's not. Chair, GMB is calling upon Cabinet to support our request for this in-principle decision to be deferred due to the fact that there are so many critical questions unanswered, as well as a lack of meaningful consultation with staff and the trade unions. What I would also like to say is that capacity isn't down because because of the building, it's down because of COVID and the NHS actually not carrying out operations. However, the report keeps referring back to the same old jargon, which is used to ratify the decision to outsource this workforce. 1, building not fit for purpose. Why is it not fit for purpose? Isn't it better than a clinical hospital ward or a hotel room? 2, needs of the service users have changed and the current accommodation cannot meet requirements. We would reiterate, is this because service users are demanding to go to Redfield Lodge, a residential care for people with severe dementia with no rehab facility, or to go to a hotel or hospital ward? 3, rehab care is not a typical function of local authorities. This was a groundbreaking initiative back in the day, and Bristol City Council should be proud of leading the way. Why is Bristol not part of the CCG BNSSG funding stream? Is it through inertia or a political decision to just rid itself of all in-house care? 4, there will not be any loss in capacity. There will be at least 2 beds less. What happens if Serona cannot get sufficient staff to open the 15-bedded ward? Why can't Serona recruit sufficient staff to open the closed ward at South Bristol Community Hospital when unemployment rate is high within the South Bristol area? Will those who transfer to Serona have to be clinically trained to carry out this role? This is what we were told at the meeting on the 12th of January. What about our members' hours? We were told when we asked that question, nobody could answer it. They didn't know. Why can't the council allow staff to have admitted body status to continue with the local government pension scheme? We were told this was not possible and that they would all be able to go into the NHS scheme. But will they be admitted, and what does that scheme look like? What is Serona pay and grading scheme? We do know that they have a different scheme from anyone else. What guarantee does the council have that Serona will not pull out of this contract in South Bristol as it did with Baines? How much is the council paying for Serona to take over the South Bristol rehab staff and service? How can either the CCB, the BNSSG or the council, for their discharge to access, justify sending the frail and vulnerable to a hotel room just down the road, where they will not receive the care they need and deserve to enable them to return to their home and independence?
Thank you for your statement.
No, sorry, I haven't quite finished yet.
Well, that's been 3 minutes now.
Okay, well, I've almost finished. What guarantee can the council give that economic, technical, organisational issues under 2P will not take place within a month, 6 months, a year or longer? GMB is demanding that no in-principle decision is made and that any decision is deferred until all the questions outlined above and additional questions which have been asked and are still unanswered. We are demanding proper and meaningful consultation takes place with staff and their union representatives, with a thorough due diligence process is undertaken to ensure this rehab service is not just discarded without any thought for the people of Bristol who provide the service, use the service and future service users. Now I've finished.
Thank you. Thank you for your statement. We have another statement from Councillor Chris Jackson. Chris, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's going to be a lot shorter than that. As you see from my statement, all I'm asking for is to have this decision deferred. And the main reason is the negotiating between staff and our senior management team in adult social care and HR has been appalling. I've asked lots of questions and it can't give me the answers to it. But the sad thing about that is they've been better than Sirona in this sort of negotiation, because they've only had two options: take it and we'll tell you what all your terms and conditions is afterwards, or don't take it, which I don't think is right to treat our staff like that, especially after all of our senior managers have always been saying how wonderful they've been throughout the COVID pandemic. So all I'm asking is let's have some meaningful negotiation with staff, go and speak to the staff and see what they want, and defer the decision until that meaningful discussion can take place. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Thanks, Chris. So can I first ask any other Cabinet members for comment? No? All right, Helen, can I hand back to you if you want to come back?
Yeah, I do want to come back, and I do want to say to people, and I know that they'll feel that this is, you know, a cynical comment, but it genuinely isn't, that we do hear what they've said about the shortcomings of the discussions that they've been so far, and that's been very, very disappointing. I think, you know, I mentioned to you when we met outside that this proposal originally came from Sirona, and I expect them to be much more engaged with the discussions about how it's going to work. I mean, some of the details questions that you've asked, Rowena, I think that there are answers to them, and I don't know why it is that those answers haven't been given to members of staff, but it would be wrong for me to go through them here. I think what I've been told by managers, and I hope that this is right, because I'd be very disappointed if it isn't, is that the detail of some of it can't be discussed or can't be worked through until we've made that in principle decision. So I think that my view is still that we make the in principle decision, but that I will ask for weekly reports about how those consultations and discussions are going, so that I can get the feedback, and the unions are very welcome to contact me and tell me if there's any particular issues that aren't being ironed out through those, and that at the end of that process that we bring it back to Cabinet for another decision to sign it off, and that we only sign it off at that stage if we're satisfied by all of those, you know, that the answers have been given to staff. Because this is, yes, it's part of the budget discussion, but it's also an important decision to keep in mind, and you finished with this, Rowena, and you're right to, the service to residents, and we've got to keep that in mind as well as our duty to you as staff. So that I'm going to slightly amend the recommendation in order to do that, if that's all right, and I'm sure that we can come up with the official wording, but that's what I would recommend to Cabinet that we do.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. And on behalf of Marvin, I can commit to that too, that we will bring that back, assuming that those negotiations continue in the way that, or start in the way that we would hope. No other comments now? In which case then, Helen, I'll hand back to you to take the decision, which I support.
I didn't understand what we're voting on. I didn't understand what you're going to do. So you're going to make a decision, but you're not making a decision.
No.
Yeah.
What are you actually making a decision on now?
The report says to trigger the in principle decision, and that wouldn't have come back to Cabinet. All of those negotiations would have happened between officers and managers and the staff and Sirona. But what we're saying is that before that is signed off, it will come back as a formal Cabinet decision.
Thanks,
so
Helen.
in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the amended recommendation.
Thank you, Helen. So now we move to our next moved agenda item, which is agenda item 24, the Education Capital Programme of Works. And I ask Councillor Asher Craig to introduce this report.
Thanks very much. So the report in front of you today is to really approve the allocation to specific projects and the spend of the DFE's capital grant on a number of capital programmes that will support sufficient mainstream and special educational needs and disability school places within the city. Continued pressure on secondary education in Bristol means further capital programmes are required if we are to meet our requirements for September 2022. We have a continuing commitment to expanding and improving specialist provision within the city, ensuring that we are able to meet more needs locally, strengthen children with sense of belonging in this city. So the council receives a capital grant fund from the DFE, which allows us to work with schools to create additional school places where required and undertake essential buildings maintenance when needed. There are 2 new secondary free schools that have been approved for opening in the city under that free schools programme. And the timely opening of these schools is indeed essential to support this council in securing sufficiency of mainstream school places. One of the new schools located near the enterprise zone has been significantly delayed already, and the DFE are already indicating that the earliest the school could open is September 2023. The DFE have also informed the council that the new school for the south of the city has also been delayed by a year to 2024, and an opening in 2023 will require temporary accommodation. So in response to these delays, the council has been working with existing schools across the city to identify where we can put additional temporary capacity to meet the projected year-end application numbers for 2022 and 2023, and what those capital interventions are required to make them feasible. Secondary school heads have worked extremely hard with officers to accommodate additional numbers where they can, and ensuring student safety and quality of teaching and learning is not adversely impacted. So I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank those heads for their help. This report really identifies the projects in detail in the appendix to the report and the resources that we need to secure that additional capacity. I'd like to remind the Cabinet that back in July 2020, we approved a programme of works to create additional capacity within the special educational needs estate to deliver sustainable sufficiency of places and dramatically improve parts of our existing estate. At the time, full capital funding was not available to allocate to all projects in the SEN programme, but the council has now secured new capital grant funding of just over £5 million to support those programmes. This report is now able to add additional capital to projects, but we also have to be mindful that we are in the middle of a volatile construction market. So we have seen estimates for some of the capital expenditure kind of increase slightly, but today's decision will ensure that those projects are resourced completely and sufficiently to proceed. So we plan to come back in June. There will be more money. The government is putting more money on the table. We'll have we'll know around spring what that looks like, and then we will bring back to Cabinet a second wave of SEN projects that we would like to approve. So this report is set out in front of you, and I'm seeking approval for both myself as the Cabinet Lead for Education, Equalities and Children, and the Exec Director to take the decision to allocate and spend the grant funding. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Asher. We've had 2 public forum questions on this one from Councillor Christine Townsend, so if I can hand over for your first question.
Hi. Hi, thank you. So this is in relation to Appendix A. So it says that there's 6 million capital for Year 7 bulge classes. So my first question is whether that's reliant on the DFE saying that the new free school will be going ahead.
Sorry, could you repeat your question for me?
So Appendix A.
Okay, I've got so many things open. Yeah, Appendix A. Yeah, go ahead.
So
yeah.
the Year 7 bulge class is 6 million capital. So is the 6 million coming? Is that dependent on the free schools being actually being open?
No, because this is grant funding.
Okay, so where's that 6 million coming from then?
Hold on a second. Can I actually come back to you on that one? Yeah, can I come back to you? I'll give you a written response, a detailed response. Our director isn't here, but as I said before, we allocated money back in 2020 for these works. We've got additional resources to enable us to spend on capital. So this funding is, as I said, DFE and funding that we ourselves are allocating as a local authority.
Okay, thus it says it depends on DFE's success. But anyway, okay. So my second question is in relation to the mainstream Year 7 places that we know will be needed in this coming September. So round 1 applications closed on the 31st of October. So at the moment, how many Year 7 places are needed in addition to that is already in place?
So I think the answer is 311.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it in my paper
existing.
because I've got lots of papers open at this moment in time, so I'm trying to find my response because I do have the numbers here. Sorry. What? You answered it for me, so it's fine.
Yeah, so I mean the answer is 311 Year 7 places.
Oh, it's 311.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's 200, right, okay. So
Yeah.
my follow-up then to that one is if the Year 7, the new schools don't open, will the administration be looking to secure any of these bulge classes in secondary schools outside of the local authority like they did last year?
At the moment, we're just talking to the schools internally within the boundaries of Bristol. So I don't anticipate that. I'm hoping that the negotiations that we are having with secondary school heads at this moment in time will be able to cater for the bulge that is coming through. So in terms of additional places, but we will see. But I don't anticipate that we have to go outside the city.
Okay, thank you.
My son is one of these Year 7, or will be one of these Year 7 pupils looking for a school place this year. I live right on the border, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Great. So, can I ask for any comments from Cabinet members? No? Great, thank you. In which case, I'll hand back to Councillor Ashcraig to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on the screen.
Okay, so in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve this report. Thank you.
Thanks, Asher. So then another one for you. So this is agenda item 29, Bristol's first Citizens Assembly Outcomes Progress Report 1. Your microphone's not on.
So thank you so much for bringing this report forward. Back in January 2020, the full council decided that we were going to trial deliberative democracy processes for 2021. And over a period of time, we recruited 60 members to form Bristol's first Citizens Assembly. That took place between January and March of 2021. And those Assembly members heard detailed evidence and deliberated around 3 key topics under the overarching question, how do we recover from COVID-19 and create a better future for all of us in Bristol? A report was presented to full council on the 6th of July that described the process and the resulting 17 recommendations comprising 82 actions and the rationale produced by the Assembly in reaching those decisions. Since we presented the report to full council, the report of the Citizens' Assembly's recommendations and the proposed actions have been shared with the One City Economy Board and other One City boards to consider and inform the city's economic recovery and renewal strategy, and in preparing our 2022 refresh of the One City plan. We've also been using the actions and recommendations to prepare the Council's updated corporate strategy for 2022-27, and that has now, and all of that report has also been shared with managers across the Council as part of our annual service and business planning processes, which looks ahead to 2022-23. So we're walking our talk. We said that we would take the actions and recommendations. We said we would report back to Citizens' Assembly members. We will take an update also to the city through the One City gatherings as well, so people are aware, because we did inform the wider city of these decisions. And I have to say, I also have to take my hat off to a huge part of the city who are also taking on board some of these recommendations, because citizens were quite clear and they understood that it wasn't in the gift of the local authority alone to deliver on this wider agenda. And so everybody seems to be stepping up to the plate. So there you have it. This report is just for information only, but we promised Assembly members we would report back, and that's what we're going to be doing on a regular basis.
Yeah, thanks, Asha. We did have a question from Councillor Paul O'Rourke. She's not here, but that may be because we've moved the agenda item. So if she does arrive later, we'll... Oh, okay, great. Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment? No? Okay, well, thank you. And Cabinet notes the recommendations are set out in the report, and which will now be displayed on the screen. Right. Now back to the original order of agenda items. We're at agenda item 12, Procurement and Collection of Enforcement Agent Services, and I will introduce this report. This report seeks approval to procure and award the contracts necessary for enforcement agent services for a maximum of 5 years. We have been on a journey to transform debt through our ethical debt collection initiatives. However, where efforts to engage with the customer have not succeeded, or where alternative recovery options have not been successful or are not appropriate, we still need to use enforcement. Our ongoing local outreach approach, work with third sector advice agencies and partnership with the Money and Pension Service continues to minimise the number of cases that need to be referred to enforcement agents for collection. We recognise that some residents are considered vulnerable or at risk of being vulnerable due to their circumstances and may require additional support, either short or long term, when dealing with personal finances. The corporate debt management policy outlines enhanced approach for working with indebted customers in vulnerable circumstances to ensure that we continue to provide the best possible support. The collection and enforcement agents procured for these contracts will work to the guidelines set by the Council, which will include the adoption of an ethical approach and specific actions when vulnerability has been identified. The Council will then ensure on occasions where it may be necessary to use collection and enforcement agents that they work within the guidelines and standards set by the Council. So we have received 2 public forum questions on this item. The first one is from Councillor Marley Bennett.
Thank you, Craig, and it's really good to see there's recognition that often people in debt are vulnerable and a commitment to have ethical collection standards. I've seen the phrase used, can't pay or won't pay, and I was just wondering if we can sort of explain how the Council comes to the decision whether someone genuinely isn't in a position to pay back their debts, or they're in a position that they're choosing not to, and using enforcement is the appropriate intervention at that time.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. I mean, the next paper we're going to take is the corporate debt management policy, which does sort of give some of that detail. We recognise that causes of debt vary and recovery methods should be focused accordingly. Therefore, wherever possible, debt will be categorised to help focus the use of resources and concentrate action on those who won't pay rather than those who can't. The Council's approach in collecting and recovering outstanding monies will be proportionate, consistent, transparent, firm, fair and courteous. The council take into account such variables as the personal circumstances of the customer and their household, their payment history, their ability to pay, the sustainability of payments, and consideration is given to financial safeguarding through Department for Work and Pensions appointees and or Court Protection Property and Affairs deputyship. We will work with citizens to maximise their available income via referrals to appropriate third sector agencies or applications for discounts and release. Officers will also use all available data to determine the most effective and appropriate method of debt recovery, balancing the need for repayment against the circumstances of the customer, affordability of repayment and their obligations to the council and other priority debts. It's probably worth pointing out as well that that doesn't really cover the kind of early intervention stuff that we do, so there is a lot of work we put into sort of nudge reminders with text messages and so on when people become slightly, are slightly late in paying. In the past, that might see you very quickly slapped with, for example, your annual council tax bill payable that month. So those are the sorts of things that we're trying to stop people getting into that position in the first place. That's not been easy through COVID because we weren't actively allowed to chase people, but we have been able to start that again, which helps.
Thank you. That's very assuring to hear.
Thank you. Did you have a supplementary or you? No? Great, thanks, Marnie. So the next question is from Councillor Miracle, who I don't think is attending, so she will get a written response. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment? No? Okay, great, thank you. In which case, I thank everyone for their comments. Marley's question. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, and which will now be displayed on the screen. Agenda item 13, corporate debt management policy. This report seeks the approval for the implementation of a corporate debt management policy which has been developed to introduce a clear set of standards to harmonise debt collection activity across the Council. Although varying working procedures are well established in most areas, the Council does not currently have a formal policy in place that details the approach to the raising of debt, the collection procedures carried out and the action taken to recover unpaid debts. The policy provides a collection framework for all debt types, adopts best practice, embeds an ethical approach, at the same time formalising into a single policy other well-established procedures and regulations. The Council also has wide-ranging social responsibilities and are required to ensure that all client groups are dealt with fairly and appropriately. The policy sets out how the Council will approach debt recovery, having regard to minimising arrears, whilst at the same time not causing undue hardship or consequences to the debtor as a result of the overall approach to multiple debt. It is anticipated that the process improvement, single view of the debt, additional local outreach work and engagement with the customer will improve the overall bad debt position, the level of write-offs required and over time mitigating in-year adverse cash balances that could result from a more ethical approach. The policy will be subject to regular reviews and the actual financial income position against budgets will be closely monitored and debt and write-off levels reported periodically to the Council's Audit Committee. We've not received any public forum statements or questions on this one. Can I offer it up to any Cabinet members who wish to comment? Tom, yeah.
Just so I welcome this policy, and I know a huge amount of work has gone into getting it over the line. There's been a huge amount of thought that's gone into how do we pull this together, because it's dealing with debt is hugely complex, and individuals will have a whole host of reasons why they may not engage, and I think I just really welcome how it's been thought about through sort of thinking about sort of being psychologically informed as well, and sort of mental health and really kind of the bits around that, breathing space and the mental health breathing space scheme, seeing those in there and really like front and centre is really good to see. So just a thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks, Tom. I mean, obviously we did trial this on council tax for a couple of years, and it was being very successful until COVID hit, and then now the numbers are so obscured by that we don't know that it was continuing to be successful, but it was certainly appeared to be working. So to sort of extend it corporately, I think across the whole council should be a very powerful thing to avoid people having bailiffs knocking at their door. Okay, so does anyone else want to comment? No? Okay, well, thank you for your comments. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report and which will now be displayed on the screen. Agenda item 14, ethical and equitable investment policy. I'll introduce this one. The previously titled ethical investment policy was last updated in 2015, and it's been refreshed and redesigned with key stakeholders to provide guiding principles to ensure the Council make investments which are consistent with the Council's values and ethical policies, such as the social value policy. They are inclusive and equitable with regard to the access to the Council's investment funding, as well as helping to address economic inequalities, and that they provide a positive social and or environmental return. In other words, have impact alongside financial return where possible. The Council broadly holds three types of investments: Treasury investments, service investments and service loans. The refreshed policy sets out investment principles based on three key features: defining who the Council excludes from investment, being proactive in seeking investments that are ethical and equitable and that provide positive social or environmental impact alongside financial return, and that incorporates equitable investment principles to allow investments to be used as a lever to help address inequalities affecting disadvantaged groups and communities in Bristol. And the policy is in adherence with the Treasury Management Code. I just want to take a moment to extend thanks to Heather and the Ethical Investment Policy team for all the work they did in pulling this together. It was a not insignificant task to bring together a federation of small businesses, unions, and you know, anyone else you can think of into that conversation. So a big thanks. We did have a statement from Scrutiny earlier, but we've had no further public forum statements or questions on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? So in which case, in terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will be now displayed on the screen. Me again, I'm afraid. Agenda item 15, repair and maintenance contract extension, the one we're all here for. This paper seeks approval to extend our current repair and maintenance contract for 12 months. This contract allows us to deliver essential statutory maintenance and repair works across Bristol City Council's corporate estate. This includes maintaining our plumbing and heating systems, undertaking any necessary repairs to floors and internal walls, and maintaining our electrical systems. We often joke that papers like this don't attract a lot of attention, but help us keep the lights on. This service is literally keeping the lights on. This extension will help us to ensure we're meeting our statutory health and safety obligations and ensure continuity of service while we prepare to re-procure this activity in line with our corporate landlord model. We've not received any public forum statements on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Repair and maintenance contract extension? No? Okay. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Next up, agenda item 16, YTL Arena Bristol Travel Mitigations. I will ask Councillor Don Alexander to introduce this report. Over to you, Don.
Thank you, Craig. The fact that a private developer has come forward to fund and build a major world-class events arena is a landmark benefit for the city. As it is in an existing structure, its carbon footprint is far lower than a new building, and YTL have committed to make this the most environmentally friendly arena in Europe. It will be the third largest arena in the country and will ensure Bristol hosts major performances and cultural and sporting events that we have never been able to host before. The trial event featuring Massive Attack demonstrated what a great location for travel this is, and that was before the travel improvements and the new station are built. That event showed that people travel from all over Bristol and north and south of the city and surrounding areas. The arena is in a major development that includes several thousand homes, park and a lake with excellent facilities. This paper provides a match of private and public funds to support the housing from which the arena will benefit. This match of funds is in line with all substantial developments, and we're delighted to introduce it to Cabinet colleagues.
Thanks, Don. So we've received 6 questions on this item. The first is from Suzanne Audrey. Please ask your question, Suzanne. The microphone's on his way.
Thank you very much. So we keep being told that no public money is going into in order for the YTL Arena in Filton to go ahead. And I'm assuming that's because we're saying the arena's the arena rather than the travel. But I did, you know, it looks like we're spending 2.66 million, and I just wanted to know if you could explain the extent to which public money is needed for the arena to go ahead.
Thanks, Suzanne. The arena construction and the access roads to it are funded entirely by YTL. This has saved the city at least £165 million and removed all the city's liability to the private operator, YTL. We're delighted that YTL has come forward to develop a world-class arena which will also be the most environmentally friendly arena in Europe. There are also new housing and employment developments planned for this area. Like any major mixed-use regeneration project, the increased rail, bus and network management infrastructure to serve this area relies on a mixture of public and private money. Without this combination of private developer contributions alongside regional and other government investment funds, the necessary infrastructure would have a limited chance of being delivered. Public funding is further supported by private money through SIL and Section 106 across the Cribs Patchway new neighbourhood, where developers are signed up to a Section 106 infrastructure tariff of £5,800 per dwelling completed. So far, we have secured nearly £8 million of Cribs Patchway Section 106 funding for improvements for transport mitigation in the Bristol area. This is similar to other regeneration areas, including the Temple Quarter Enterprise Zone and Bedminster Green, where transport infrastructure is drawn from a variety of public and private funding sources, which have also included significant levels of SIL and Section 106. Does that help?
I don't know. Is it still working?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to hold it a bit further in. Thank you. I know if I'm here, sometimes I don't get a written response, but because that was quite long, is it possible to have the written, what you
Yeah,
said?
I'm sure, yeah, we can get your written response. Yeah.
That's great. I read in the transport report, which I thought was absolutely excellent. I'm sure you've congratulated the people that prepared that. I thought that was really good. But in there, it did say that for the massive attack event, there was a bit of a mess with the buses. And so obviously money is going to have to be spent to sort that out. But my supplementary really was whether you're confident that we're going to have the new rail link and the park and ride services in time for the arena to open, or whether we have to wait for those to be in place for the arena to open.
Yes, it's a very major project, but it's certainly on time at the moment.
Okay, so that's great. And so just sort of finally, I just wondered, do you think that we're going to have to put any more money, Bristol City Council money, into the travel plan, or do you think it's covered now?
Well, we haven't really put any money in. Actually, what we've done is we've saved money, and we've actually asked the developer to pay a very large contribution towards putting infrastructure in for that whole new neighbourhood up there, which is 6,000 houses, a lake, a couple of schools, 2 railway stations. So we're not really putting any money in. We've saved about 180 million.
So I know this is very
Sorry,
tricky.
you've had 2 supplementaries already.
I know, Craig, can
You're
you
supposed
just
to have one.
explain, though, with your lovely Bristol accent, which I absolutely adore, what that 2.6 million is? I don't understand then. Are we not spending that?
Sorry, is that a question for me? Sorry, I was looking at Don.
2.6 million. So that's the 2.6 million from WECA. Well, that's the contribution from West of England Combined Authority. I mean, I'm very happy to put public money into infrastructure in order that we create a sustainable neighbourhood and everything. I really have. Well, we're not.
Yes,
we're
it's
not,
WECA money.
Yeah, we're actually going to gain an awful lot. I mean, all the business rates and everything else we're going to gain. Unlike the original scheme, which would have cost us enormous amounts of money to open a entertainment venue at the beginning of a pandemic.
Thanks, Dawn. Thank you for your questions, Suzanne. We do have some more. So Tim Rippington was the next councillor asking, but I understand he's not here this evening, so he'll get a written response. Following that, we have 2 questions from Councillor Lisa Stone. Can you ask your first question, Lisa?
Hi, good evening. Thanks very much, Dawn. I think kind of like you've answered a few of the questions just now, but I'll ask it anyway. I see that there will be funding of staff to manage passengers at the city centre bus stop. This already implies that the bus-based transport system will not be fit for purpose. Where will these dedicated bus stops be?
The ones in the centre, or do you talk about around the city and the park and rides and everything?
Well, yeah, pretty much around the city and in the centre. It goes on with my second question.
Okay, well, we've got a number of park and rides that's listed in the report where the park and rides will be. I think the city centre ones might have been in the original planning documents, but there's no suggestion. We discussed this at the planning committee. It was 2017, or maybe it was 18. But I remember Councillor Breckles actually and going into great detail over the park and rides and the services that would be supplied to it. So actually this has been a discussion which was pretty much sorted out at the planning committee a number of years ago. But it looks like it will be quite adequate, and obviously we will work with them to tweak it to any extent that it's not.
Okay, it seems to me that that the council seems to be planning a single segregated route north to south from the arena. Is that correct?
No. What gave you that impression?
I'm just saying.
Well, there is one road. There is one road that goes up there, and we obviously need to deal with the potential congestion on that road. That's why, in fact, the lights and the fibre and everything that's going in is seeking to address the existing one main road there. But in terms of buses, park and rides and everything, there'll be one in my ward in Portway Park and Ride and other areas. So we're not anticipating that the only issue will be on that road, but it's obviously it is an arterial road.
So I'd just like to bring this to a close. So you will be putting in travel routes between east and west as well, yeah?
Between where, sorry?
Between east and west. Across east and west, yeah.
Well, people can come and park in Shirehampton at the Park and Ride, and then they will take the bus from there. And I would very much hope that people will not come by car, that they will use the travel options provided. So they can come to my ward, pick up the bus, and be taken there.
So there's a segregated route north to south, but not one from east to west.
So you have
well,
had
there
your
is a road from
supplementary.
north to south. It's called the A38. It's always been there.
Thanks, Don. No,
yeah.
That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. I mean, I guess the point is that the operator is going to be putting on some shuttle buses from various locations and paying for them. But
it was discussed at the planning committee several years ago. We planned it all.
Okay, good. Do we have any more questions? No, I think that was it. So thank you very much. Do any cabinet members wish to comment? Tom, yeah?
Just say both as a resident in the north of the city and also as the Ward Council of Horfield, I welcome this report because I note it includes some improvements to signal junctions within the ward of Horfield by Monks Park Avenue and Toronto Road. And I think the improvements that are going to come from all this work are going to be hugely beneficial to Bristol while saving a significant sum to the taxpayer, which means we've been able to invest that in other parts of our capital programme, which has obviously been under some pressure through the budget process.
Well, I'd be remiss of me not to mention the point that Marvin always makes, was that we would have been opening an arena potentially at a hugely escalating cost to build, and we'd have opened it in the middle of a pandemic, which would have been an absolute disaster because we wouldn't have been able to make the rent payments. Okay, thank you. I think that's it then, unless anyone else wants to comment from Cabinet, in which case I'll hand back to Councillor Don Alexander to take the decision, which I support and which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks, Don. Agenda item 17, West End multi-storey car park. Again, I'll ask Councillor Don Alexander to introduce this one.
Thank you. This paper gives Cabinet an update on the progress of the repairs to the West End multi-storey car park. 1.36 million of traffic and highways maintenance capital was repurposed to bring the car park back into use. As the paper explains, funding was provided to two car parks, Templegate and West End, multi-stories. Templegate was completed in time and within budget. At West End, unfortunately, conditions were much worse than the original inspection concluded. The unexpectedly weak structures required additional support, and repairs to a roof were required to protect the tenant. These issues, combined with COVID's well-known impact on construction project timescales, has created extra costs beyond the original budget. The project is 80% completed, and this paper allocates the final funding from the traffic and highways maintenance budgets. Going forward, the car park will generate a significant revenue of around £1 million a year, and is important parking provision for Park Street retailers, city centre and locals. It is also an important as a facility outside of the CAS that will support the city centre retail offer. The completion of the repairs will mean that the facility will be reopened by April 2022.
Thanks, Don. We haven't received any public forum statements or questions on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, in which case I'll hand back to Councillor Alexander to take the decision which I support and is now displayed on screen.
Thank you. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. Agenda item 18, future energy supply. I'll ask Councillor Nicola Beach to introduce this one.
Thanks, Craig. The paper in front of you today sets out 3 key issues around the energy space. The challenge that we're facing immediately, the strategic look at how we could manage our current energy better in future, and an innovative approach to decarbonising our energy supply in future. So first is the squeeze. To protect taxpayers, this paper recommends moving from a fixed price energy contract to a more flexible procurement method, and in the interim, a shorter fixed term to bridge the gap. Make no mistake, alongside citizens in the UK, this council has been hit hard with escalating energy prices. The current budget pressure in 21-22 is 7 million. But thanks to the paper and the smart work and the skilled team, we've been able to reduce next year's budget pressure to 3 million. The recent Resolution Foundation report, Higher and Higher, is warning that household consumers nationally will be faced with a price hike of up to 50% overnight when the higher price cap comes into force on April the 1st. This, with a number of other English households, the number of English households who will experience fuel stress, i.e., spending more than 10% of their household budget on energy bills, will triple from 9% to 27%. My personal view is we find ourselves as a nation in this predicament because of lazy and deeply flawed energy policy that this national government has had for over a decade. Johnson will talk till the cows come home about his 40 gigawatts by 2040 plan in the east of England. But as we sit here today, this continuous reliance on overseas energy means that this investment cannot come soon enough. Thankfully, back at home in Bristol, we have got on with the job, investing over £60 million in that same decade in renewable energy. But unfortunately, ourselves and our citizens will still feel some of this shock when it arrives. Other energy users, as ourselves, are not exempt from this, and we will see that pressure as it has emerged in the budget papers today. There is a need for a short and long-term solution to this, and I'm pleased to see that energy strategy is ratcheting up the agenda. So first, we needed to get smart, and we've invested in our metering within this paper to make sure that our energy consumption is both environmentally and financially sound, and in the mix when we look at future property strategies as we come out of this COVID world. Then looking again at our assets and continuing the hard work the HRA has already done to insulate our council housing stock, attempting to lift our tenants out of fuel stress, and in the long term, taking these learnings to protect us from future energy shocks. The final key point in this paper is the sleeving pilot. A sleeving pool, and get used to this lingo, is a really innovative way of securing zero carbon energy for our own operations as we continue to invest in the renewable energy generation of Bristol and meet our 2025 target. It's a small ask in this paper, 100k, but it punches way higher than that. And it will shape a detailed plan to agree the governance around how to agree a sleeving agreement. It represents a big step forward in us being able to procure directly our locally generated renewable energy and move us significantly forward in our decarbonisation plans. I see there are some questions from members about the sleeving pool, so I'll leave it there and I'll bring this report today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. So, as you mentioned, we've got 3 public forum questions on this item. The first 2 are from Councillor David Wilcox. David, can I ask your first question?
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheney. I welcome the reductions in carbon footprint and future plans for decarbonisation for our energy production. Can we get some guarantees about the sleeve pool energy supply model that we will only be using renewable energy sources for that? Please.
Yes, is the short answer to that. So the primary purpose of going to this effort to set up this sleeving arrangement is to make sure that we make use of our locally generated renewable energy within our buildings, and we also support our community energy partners who are in turn generating some of this electricity. Initially that will be from the council's own renewables, which we own ourselves, which is wind and solar, but other locally added generation will be added over time.
then any national element of that sleeved supply, if, for instance, local generation doesn't meet our demand, will be sourced from renewable sources.
Thanks, Nicola. Do you have a supplementary, David?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that reply, Nicola. The report talks about no-cost and low-cost measures for reducing energy use. You mentioned reducing the temperature in offices, but do you have any idea of what those other measures might be, please?
Yeah, it's a good question, David, and I think it's a question, you know, I look to Craig really, because we've been discussing, and Tom for that matter, in terms of the HRA stock, is, you know, the old adage that the best energy is the energy that you don't use. So just really going back to some basics. I know there's councillors that have got ideas, Councillor Steve Pearce, I'll give him a name check, about what tenants could be provided with to help their own insulation, thermal curtains. You know, we're talking about really back to the basics. Within the actual council estate itself, obviously, it's a slightly bigger curtains, is what I'd say, sat in this room. And I think this was one of the challenges, is in a COVID operating environment, like we're sat here today, the window is open. And the idea of having the heating on to a comfortable level is bizarre as far as I'm concerned, because the windows have to be open from a public, rightly, for a public health measure. And so there are suggestions. It's already happened in Temple Street, where there are parts of the building which we've been able to close off, which represents a significant saving. And that's where we've got, you know, workforces either out in the field or working from home. We simply don't need to heat and power the whole building. And so that's what I meant in my opening spiel, David, was around, I'm really glad that energy is at the table when it comes to talking about how to manage our property better in future.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably just comment. So part of our, you know, there are plans in the budget to reduce the council's footprint overall in terms of physical space that we take up. Obviously, part of the decision making and part of the map that we've built includes the revenue cost, but also the carbon footprint of that building. So we'll reduce, you know, that by coming out of those buildings. So thank you. So on to, you had a second question, I believe. Do you want to move to that one?
Yes, I do. So what plans does Bristol City Council have for diversifying its renewable electricity generation supply? Because currently we only have wind and solar, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, David. So obviously, and if you stick around for the rest of the Cabinet meeting, you'll see we'll talk about City Leap in a bit. So the further development and diversification of our renewable energy generation will be in partnership with City Leap. But other local renewables will also be available through this sleeved pool. Like, as I said earlier, it's not restricted to just either renewables that we generate or renewables that are already there today. The council, as a council, we have already divested its renewable energy generation by installing air, ground and water source heat pumps. The solar thermal system, which is being put into Eastern Leisure Centre this year, and the water source heat pump at Castle Park are also two good examples of where we're already diversifying our kind of the way in which we produce energy in the city.
So those two examples you gave were about heat generation, not electricity.
I think what I'm describing to you is how we're diversifying our heat and power mix.
Okay, thank you.
Plus heat accounts for a huge proportion of the energy uses of the city, don't they? So are you done? Anyone else want to add any further comments? We did have another question from Councillor Annie Stafford Townsend, but I understand she's not going to make it today, so she will get a written response. Any other Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, good, thank you. In which case I'll hand back to you, Nicola, to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Craig. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approved the recommendations as set out in this report, which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. Agenda item 19, the Homelessness Prevention Grant Winter 2021. Can I ask Councillor Tom Renard to introduce this report?
Thank you, Craig. We know that we continue to face significant challenges around the private rented sector, and you know, particularly around astronomical rent rises, the issues around no-fault evictions. And whilst COVID did bring about some welcome reprieves in the form of the eviction ban, we're now starting to see some of the challenges re-emerge as the eviction ban has ended. And, you know, I think it would be remiss of me, whilst obviously government funding is always very welcome, you know, we are disappointed to see that the removal eviction ban has happened and that the local housing allowance will be frozen again in 22-23. What this funding will do is help us to support some of the most vulnerable in the private rented sector. And obviously, we're going to have to be thinking very carefully about how we use that funding. Over 30% of households in Bristol live in the private rented sector, just so we can understand the scale, over sort of 60,000 properties, give or take, when you think about the scale. The one-off payment of the 610,000, it will enable us to support between 150 and 250 low-income private renters with COVID-19 related rent arrears to avoid eviction or find a new home. And whilst we did see a reduction in private rented possession proceedings and evictions in 2020-21, the numbers are increasing again, linked, as I've mentioned, to the removal of the eviction ban and some of the other protections that were in place around longer notice periods. So, who and how will we help? The target group for prevention of homelessness for the PRS is any low-income household at risk of homelessness. This will be mainly focused on those in rent arrears. The target groups for access to the private rent sector are supported housing, hostel and temporary accommodation residents. Each move on from such accommodation to the private rented sector can free up high-demand bed spaces, reduce rough sleeping numbers and reduce the council's use of temporary accommodation. Anticipated expenditure will be split roughly as follows: 70% prevention, 30% access to sustainable private rented sector tenancies, and obviously we can flex this depending on casework and take up of the funds use. The full detail is set out in the paper, so I won't continue on because I know it's been a long cabinet meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Can I ask any cabinet members if they wish to comment? We've not had any public forum on it. No? In which case I'll hand back to you then, Tom, to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. Agenda item 20, City Leap Energy Partnership Procurement Update. Can I ask Councillor Nicola Beach to introduce the report?
Thanks, Craig. I'm bringing this with a financial ask to continue and complete the procurement for City Leap, but I also wanted just to take the opportunity to update Cabinet on our progress. So the City Leap Energy Partnership is a project to appoint a strategic partner to enter a 20-year joint venture with the Council with the aim of delivering £1 billion worth of investment in low-carbon energy infrastructure in the city and support our aim of becoming net zero carbon neutral by 2030. In July 2020, we brought a Cabinet report to restart the City Leap Energy Procurement Partnership. 3 bidders were shortlisted in this process to participate in the next stage of the procurement, and they are Amoresco, E.ON and Engie. The procurement has been an extensive process with the Council's City Leap team, supported with colleagues across the Council during 2020 and 2021. Just to summarise and give a flavour, I guess, and look at Craig as the two of us both sit on the City Leap board, so we've kind of seen this in real time. But each of our teams has met with the bidders in over 150 hours worth of discussion around kind of the potential infrastructure projects that we will be bringing forward in terms of our council estate, community energy, local job creation, social value and other legal matters. To give you a slight further insight into the procurement we've gone through, when the procurement went out, we received 1,800 clarification questions from the bidders over that course of the procurement cycle. Separately to the procurement, we're also aware, and I just want to give credit to the significant efforts that Bristol's vibrant local community energy sector has provided to this procurement exercise. It's not necessarily the sort of thing that you will hear, but outside of this chamber, there is a huge effort taking place with our community energy sector to work with the potential partners to make sure that we embed right from the start our values around community energy. The invitation to tender was then published on the 16th of August and 2 bidders subsequently submitted their tenders on the 17th of December. And this is kind of almost brings us up to date. We now believe that we should be entering into the detailed discussions and the submission scoring, with the winning bidder being sought in April this year, should we get to that stage. The ask today is for an additional £800,000 to get City Leap into a position where we can appoint our preferred bidder. We can be honest that was not originally part of the plan, and we did take that choice to defer the procurement by a few months to make sure we were absolutely confident it was right. But this now stands in the best possible chance of having a partnership that will drive the decarbonisation investment that the city needs. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicola. We've received 2 public forum questions on this item from Councillor Martin, Councillor Martin Fodor. Welcome, Martin. Please ask your first question.
Yeah, thanks very much, Craig, and thank you, Nicola, for bringing us up to date. As you know, I've been a supporter of our ambitions to decarbonise the city and find partners and work with community energy groups for many, many years. My first question is on the board about the confidence you have that after almost 4 years in this procurement process, which has had its sort of stop and start again a couple of years ago, your confidence that it will be able to deliver the decarbonisation and social value that has been promised in this process of the scale that's been talked about, £1 billion just in the finance side of it, to make a difference to our 2030 carbon neutrality target.
Thanks, Martin. I mean, this is a decarbonisation project, and it's kind of an obvious thing to say, but we're really in it for that game. You know, that is when we set the One City climate strategy and we saw the gap, and I think we've all seen that gap following that declaration of the climate emergency. It brings really into sharp focus where we are today, which actually, nationally speaking, we're in quite a good position, but where we need to be to get to 2030. So you're right, this has been a long procurement. I think it's right, and we did the right thing when we decided to defer it for a few months in order to make sure that we were confident that we were going to get an outcome that we wanted. I am confident that we will get there, and I just also want to say that social value sits at the very heart of City Leap, and that was really why I paid that tribute to our community energy community earlier on in this session. We've been in really extensive dialogue with these partners for 12 months, and I think it is abundantly clear what our objectives are to those partners for City Leap. Their bids are now in, and we're going through that assessment.
Do you have a supplementary, Martin?
But could I have the second sort of question initially? So I'm asking, well, this was to the Mayor, but when you envisage there will be additional and measurable benefits, by that I mean more than would have happened without a City Leap project. So there are lots of projects around, there are partners around, there are community initiatives around as well. So these additional or measurable benefits from the project in terms of carbon, how soon do we think we'll get those? From the April date that you mentioned.
Yeah. We expect to see change on the ground from 2023 onwards in terms of the City Leap partner actually getting on and delivering. But as you've rightly identified there, City Leap is a kind of the evolution of our already award-winning energy service that we have in the city, which is something that well speaks for itself really in terms of just how far we progressed with our £60 million investment in the last 10 years. I think it's a good question that you've asked, and it's a question that we've asked in our City Leap board really, is that once this procurement is done and our preferred partner is selected, we want to get on with the job. And so I thank you for the question, Martin, and I continue to look forward to working with you on it.
And do you have a supplementary, Martin?
Yeah, great, thanks. Firstly, in your first answer, you actually said if we get that far, when you talked about appointing in April. So I think it'd be really helpful if you could say, I appreciate there may be commercial confidential issues, but is there some certainty or a bit of uncertainty?
Oh no, Martin, sorry, it was me just being a bit silly about. Obviously, we haven't taken the decision in Cabinet right now to approve the £800,000. So sorry, please don't take that as any concern on my part.
Okay, that's encouraging. But obviously, in terms of it, there are lots of social and environmental outcomes we want, not just the financial side of what's claimed to be a £1 billion process. But additional money is being offered in this report. Additional funds are being needed to get to the conclusion in terms of topping £1 million in the different sides of it. And then further, it says further money to set up the from service budgets and to set up the actual company in the end. So are you confident those initial monies are going to be invested and then the return will come to the council? Or is it money we're sinking into the project just so that there's the project in the city?
I'm sorry, Martin, I'm not sure I'm following your question exactly, but are you asking me whether or not we think there will be additional investment required to set up the partnership?
Well, the report says that. So I was quoting from sorry, I didn't have the report in front of me as well, because that's usual. But so the report identifies financial and legal additional costs, and then company setting up costs, partnership setting up. So there's still further money that will be needed.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. The simple answer.
So we have to be careful, obviously.
The simple answer is yes, Martin. And I know it's. There's many people that I speak to, I'm sure Craig speaks to people as well, who are kind of desperately waiting for City Leap to come to its conclusion and get on with it. We both share that same feeling. But what I would say is that this really is nationally leading. We use that phrase a lot when we talk about our energy and infrastructure solutions in Bristol, but this really is that. And I don't think it's a problem for us to say that we're learning on the job. No one has done this before. There is no recipe book. There are no, you know, ingredients that we're aware of. We've got a great team around us, but that does not come for free. And so that is the choice that we're making, and that is the crux of this report coming forward today.
And we need to be mindful of the risk, don't we? So a lot of this effort to date has been around the financial and legal aspects of it. So we're just making sure that, you know, the council doesn't get or doesn't land itself in any trouble through the process of what is a huge and long-standing commitment between us and our partner, making sure that our values are embedded and agreed from the outset, and that we have the correct levers to enforce them or follow them through as the process flows. That's been a very long and complicated process, and has involved hundreds of conversations and negotiation and a lot of negotiations. So great.
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate that, and I hope I want it to succeed. But I'm also glad that it is coming to scrutiny, because it's important. This amount of funding and potentially taken from other service budgets as well is scrutinised properly.
Absolutely. Thanks, Martin. Okay, great. So we had no more public forum. Does any other cabinet members wish to comment? Do any other cabinet members wish to comment? No? Okay, all right. Well, obviously I've been living and breathing this with you, Nicola, all the way through, but I'll hand back to you now to take a decision, which I support.
Thank you, Craig. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will be displayed on the screen. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Agenda item 21, South West Regional Framework for Residential Care for People with a Learning Difficulty and or Autism. It's a short title. Can I ask Councillor Helen Holland to introduce this report?
I know we always go for the reports with the longest titles, but this is an important one. I mean, you're very well aware of the costs of out-of-authority placements that we have, although the majority of those placements are within the region. And so coming together with other authorities in the region and looking at those placements together and having a joint framework where we can have some comparisons about price and quality, obviously, very important, is something that doing together, hopefully, we won't be... I was going to use a bad phrase then about the providers, but it'll be much more transparent about what providers are charging us and what they're charging neighbouring authorities. So it's a good thing, and it's a great piece of cooperative work. And obviously it aligns with work that we're doing with children and young people services as well, about making sure that those kind of placements that we're getting the best value from them and only using them when we really need to. So there's a question from Tim Rippington, and he isn't here, but if I can just refer to what I would have said had he been here. I mean, clearly we're also doing a lot of work about making those options available within the city itself, rather than having to go for specialist placements out of area. And the costs are in the report, so you know how much these things cost. So that's also, you know, value for money work as well.
Yeah, great. I mean, it cuts down on, or at least it aids us in the competition, doesn't it? Because we're able to have that conversation and not get played off against each other, which is something that I'm sure doesn't happen, but potentially could. I wouldn't like to cast aspersions on anyone, but that's the current risk, isn't it? Okay, good. We've had no, well, we had Tim Rippington's question, as you mentioned, but he's not here with us. In which case, I'll open it up for cabinet members if any wish to comment. No? Okay, and then I'll hand back to you, Helen, to take the decision, which I support, and will now be displayed on the screen.
So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Great, thank you. So I think we're at another, around 22, agenda item 22, sorry, Adult Social Care Community Support Service Framework Contract Extension. Helen, back to you.
Yes, so this report is, as it says on the tin, the contract extension. So we're going to extend the contract. Funny that. Because we want to be able to procure this in a much more joined up way, and that aligns with the way that again, that change of the balance that we've got from residential and nursing places to people being supported at home, and the work that we've done on the budget around more use of general needs housing and having that support for people within their own homes is also part of this. So this means that we're going to be able to, you know, by extending this, we're going to be able to take account of the circumstances at the time when we re-procure.
Oh, sorry, great, thank you, Helen. We did have one public forum question on this, but it's from Councillor Amira Cole, who I understand is not going to be here today. She will get a written response. Can I hand over to Cabinet members for comment? Tom?
Just a very brief one to add my support for this, and you know, there's obviously a huge amount of work for us to continue to do, to think about how we're using our own housing stock and how we're kind of, you know, supporting people that need our support the most, and helping to kind of, you know, just get some of the spend under control. So that's something I'm fully committed to working in partnership on.
Great, thanks, Tom. In which case, I thank you for your comments, and I'll hand back to Helen Holland to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on the screen.
And we're going to reply to Amira in writing, but it is worth noting that as part of that answer, it will talk about the quality of the services. So through CQC and our own monitoring, that we haven't got any services that are rated inadequate in Bristol. So it is worth noting that. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you. We're back to you again. Agenda item 23, extension of contracts for care and support services in extra care housing.
So this one, again, it's a recognition of the balance changing, that we want to support more people into extra care housing and provide more extra care housing, and that's something that we're doing through Better Lives at Home, and we're talking obviously on the HRA capital report about how we can deliver more of that, and again these extensions are just to make sure that we've got that support within those extra care settings until we establish the budget. So this is a shorter extension than the previous one.
Thanks, Helen. Does any Cabinet members wish to comment? Tom, did you want to come in on this one? Extra care housing?
Go on, say something.
If only to say again, you know, hugely supportive of this. You know, within the appendices that were attached as the part, the HRA item that I spoke to earlier, it does note, you know, some of the significant investment we're going to be put into supporting extra care housing schemes within the city. You know, we know housing plays a huge role in kind of people's well-being and addressing people's needs, and also in terms of us ensuring that we're addressing the wider issues, you know, whether that be adult social care, children, you know, supporting things around care leavers as well. So again, you're really hugely supportive of this.
Yeah, great, thanks, Tom. Okay, in which case I'll hand back to Councillor Helen Holland to take the decision which I support and is now displayed on screen.
So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report.
So we were now to agenda item 24 we took earlier in the meeting, agenda item 25 we took earlier in the meeting, so we're now on to agenda item 26, which is the Q2 quarterly performance report. This is a report just for noting and is a regular report which updates us on progress against the various KPIs and updates Cabinet in their relevant portfolios. I'm assuming that everyone's read it and been through it with their director, so I've no intention of reiterating any of that, so it's just for noting. So I note the recommendations are set in the report and will now be displayed on the screen, unless anyone wants to comment. Okay, agenda item 27, the Q3 Corporate Risk Management Report 2021-22. This report provides detail on the current strategic risks to the Council achieving its strategic aims and objectives and summarises the progress and actions taken in managing and reducing these risks to a tolerable level. There are currently 2 critical risk threats, which are 1, a failure to deliver enough affordable homes to meet the city's needs, and 2, organisational resilience, which has deteriorated during the last quarter as a result of staff absences. We take all these risks extremely seriously and are taking action to reduce the risk they pose and recognise that effective risk management is key to helping us deliver our goals as a council. Full details on the risk are provided within the reports. Again, I hope Cabinet have been through these with their area. This is just a report for noting. Anyone want to comment? No? Okay, in which case Cabinet notes recommendations as set out in the report and are now displayed on screen. So agenda item 28, the COP26 outcomes. Marvin wanted to bring this paper himself, so I think we're going to postpone this one to a future meeting. And that, agenda item 29, we've already taken, so I believe that concludes the meeting for this evening. So thank you everyone for attending. The date of the next Cabinet meeting is Tuesday, the 8th of February 2022 at 4 p.m. Thank you all for your time today.